and welcome to this special. We're in conversation with the Minister of State for Finance, Mr. Jayant Sinha. Mr. Sinha, I appreciate you joining us here at this very special event for the London School of Economics. Let me start by asking you about what seems to be coordinated action between the Finance Ministry and the Reserve Bank of India. The last conversation that you and I had, when we had seen an out-of-turn policy cut, rate cut by the Reserve Bank, you said that the credit for the rate cut should have gone to the political leadership. Would you say that the credit for this rate cut should go to the political leadership as well?
Well, of course, since the budget just happened and we've had this out-of-cycle rate cut, you can clearly see how this is developing. I think the RBI and Dr. Rajan have been very clear that as far as sort of monetary policy is concerned, the cues are really coming on the fiscal side. I mean, the external environment, I would say overall, is very benign from an inflationary perspective. Clearly, the external world really is in the grip of deflation rather than inflation, and around the world inflation is very low. Obviously, the oil price decline has also been very beneficial for India. So if you actually have to look at the data, the facts that the RBI is now assessing as it thinks about its monetary stance, I think all that data is really more domestic than it is external. And as far as the domestic data is concerned, the big event has been obviously the budget and really clarification on what the fiscal consolidation roadmap is. And we had obviously said 4.1, 3.6 and then 3%, and there was concern about, can you achieve 4.1 and what is the quality of achieving that target? And then thereafter, what are you going to do with the 3.6 and the 3%? So I think now that all of that has been clarified, some of that uncertainty on the fiscal side has now been removed, and I think that's created the space, if you will, for RBI to continue to bring rates down to a level that they think balances, obviously the monetary stability side of the equation, which what is required for the economy.
What's your own expectation of how much further room there is for the Reserve Bank to bring down rates? Because the market expectation is at least 75 basis points. What's the expectation within North Block, and what do you think would be enough to actually spur the investment cycle? Because let's be clear, transmission hasn't really started. Banks aren't cutting rates just yet. What do you think is going to be enough to actually kickstart the investment cycle from an interest rate point of view?
No, I think as far as the investment cycle is concerned, what we've done in the budget, the monies that we've set aside for infrastructure, the 70,000 crores, the ability to go out and issue these infrastructure tax-free bonds, obviously the National Investment Trust, the budget that the Honorable Railway Minister has presented, which is also very focused on investment and so on. I think all of these things that we have suggested, the work that we're trying to do with respect to the power sector and so on, I think all those things will contribute to obviously public investment taking off, and as public investment takes off and people are confident about economic prospects, we'll crowd in the private investment as well. So I think the investment cycle is headed upwards, and so I think all of this should play out quite nicely over the next year or so.
There's also speculation that perhaps this out-of-turn rate cut by the Reserve Bank has to do with the fact that there's a little bit of understanding and a little bit of give and take between the Reserve Bank and the Finance Ministry as far as the monetary policy agreement is concerned, which is a pretty historic landmark agreement, and the Finance Ministry seems to have accepted most of the recommendations of the Urjit Patel Committee report. How much of this has to do with the fact that you seem to have taken that on board?
Well, I think as we've discussed many times before, Shereen, the RBI is a very professional, data-driven organization, and I'm not sure that's the data that they use when they think about where rates are going.
Okay, let me now talk to you about the investment cycle and infrastructure. By when will we have clarity on the infrastructure trust that you talked about in the budget? By when will we have clarity on the infrastructure tax-free bonds that you just talked about? Because while these are big ideas, and we would like to see these ideas actually translate into public investment, and which is what is giving people confidence that even if we have seen the fiscal deficit target slip, this money is going to be allocated towards investment and capex, but there is still concern that there isn't enough clarity, or at least timelines in place by when we are going to see the details as far as these things are concerned?
Well, the budget obviously is a plan and it's a strategy, and any plan and any strategy obviously depends on the execution. So we are going to have to now put in place, I think, the follow-through and the execution imperatives associated with that. As far as the tax bonds are concerned, that is really demand-driven. So we have a number of financing agencies like the National Housing Board, like IRFC, the Indian Railway Finance Corporation, NABARD, and so on. So they're going to have to think through what their capital raising strategies are, how much they want to get from the infrastructure tax-free bonds. And then as and when that emerges in terms of their requirements, then obviously those will happen. Now, with respect to the National Investment Trust, we've actually done quite a bit of work behind the scenes on pulling all of that together. The creation of every institution is gated by 2 or 3 very important things, as it will be for the National Investment Trust as well. Number one, of course, is the governance structure, exactly how it will be governed, and what we want to do kind of at the board level, what it is that will be done by the organization itself, and so on, and how the governance will work, and so on. So that's something that we are working through, number one. Number two, which is also extraordinarily important, is to see who are the people, because they need to be an independent professional organization, who are the people that we can rely on in terms of their own experience and their ability to actually operate a very important economic institution such as this. So we obviously gated by that. And then the third thing I will say is that the National Investment Trust really is intended to move public investment forward, to really get projects moving as well. And so we have to look and understand what these projects are also, understand those. We have a very good inventory of those, whether it is the PMO's tracking mechanism, whether it's what the Public Investment Board does. So we'll take all these 3 factors into consideration, because certain types of projects require a certain type of skill set. It does require different type of governance mechanisms. So we have to solve these 3 together to really be able to understand when and how this institution can get launched.
But over the next few months, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months?
Oh, absolutely in the near term. Absolutely in the near term, because again, as you said, it's very important to get the investment cycle moving, and if we don't have the National Investment Trust working in this regard, it will obviously then not be able to get the investment cycle moving. So yes, absolutely, as I said, we've done a lot of work behind the scenes. Now it's time to actually get into execution mode on this.
One of the other critical things to focus on as far as execution in infrastructure is concerned is to be able to revamp public-private partnership. The Finance Minister spoke about that, but the Cabinet for now has decided to defer the decision to operationalize 3P India, which was a promise made in the previous budget. Can you explain to us why is that, and what kind of revamping of the public-private agreement are we really looking at? Because if I were to take into consideration what the Roads Minister, for instance, is doing as far as road agreements and road public-private partnership projects are concerned, where he has said that you need to de-risk these projects, and hence the government will have to provide almost up to 40% equity. Is that the model that we're going to be following as far as other infrastructure projects are concerned?
The fact of the matter is that when it comes to PPP projects, we have inherited a whole host of projects that are right now stalled and in trouble, etc. And as we work through them, we begin to have a better understanding of what it will take, first of all, to get these stalled projects moving, and secondly, if in fact we are to start new projects, how those new projects should be put together. So really what we are learning now, and which is reflected in the budget language as well, is that there is a need both to have new and fresh capital coming in, which is the National Investment Trust and so on, and then also a new approach towards these PPP projects, where perhaps the sovereign takes on more of the risk and so on. So because we are working through all of these right now, as we're getting our hands very dirty in dealing with all of this, it makes sense to take a step back and really think through what's the right way to move these projects
So when
forward.
will we have clarity on what the reworked PPP model is likely to be?
Well, wait and watch. I think again, as I said, it's very important to get the investment cycle moving. This is something that's a very high priority.
But is it going to be specific for specific sectors, or do you believe that there will be a model framework which will be sector agnostic?
No, I think part of what we've learned is that the sectors have to be different, because the issues in each sector are actually quite different. In some cases, we have fuel supply problems. In other cases, we have land acquisition problems. In other cases, we have financing issues. So in each sector, because of the nature of the sector, so roads, there's almost always a land acquisition issue of some sort. Obviously, in power, we've had the fuel supply challenges and the rate agreements, etc., that have been quite challenging. So in each sector, we find that it's a little bit different, and therefore, I think that one-size-fits-all type template is probably not going to be as effective as taking a more customized approach to it.